Okay, today on the Win Daily Show, I have Andrea Lamont of Lenny Melnick Fantasy Sports, formerly of Bleacher Report and Roto Experts, and is one of the hosts of The Lady and the Legend on Sirius XM. Andrea, how are you today?
Doing great. How are you?
It's a good day to be alive. A little boring in quarantine, but hey, we're all here. We're all trying to get by, and I get to have more conversations like this, so I'm pretty happy about it.
I'm just happy to be healthy. Every day I'm happy to be healthy in New York here. So, yeah.
Stay safe. Yes, I'm in New Jersey, but a little bit further outside of the city. So stay safe. I hope everyone does well and everything is okay. And Andrea, I'm very excited to get to talk to you. I always love talking to people that have been in the industry for a long time, have come up in the industry, have done what they've done. Obviously, you're a very good friend of our friend Lenny Melnick. Obviously want to talk a little bit about him whenever I can. But the first question I have for you, here at Win Daily, we try and help people in fantasy sports and DFS. We help them win in gambling, but we also want to help them win at life. So the first question I have for you today is, how do you make sure that you win every day that you're alive?
I tell Lenny's son this. He's 21. He just turned 21. And I've been, with him as his second mom since he was 10. And I tell him that you only fail if you quit. You're going to fall down. It's all about resilience. That's how you win. It's not really about like winning the prize, winning the money. It's about just keep on trucking. And that's really what life is all about. Just like you fall down, you get up. That's what makes you stronger. And you learn from that. And, you just will never fail if you don't quit. That's
I
what I
love
tell
that.
them.
That is 100% true. I mean, if you keep going, you'll keep going, right? There's so many people that quit right before they were going to hit it, right before they were going to have that big break, which is very frustrating. And you make a great point. You can't lose if you don't quit. You just keep on going. And I really appreciate that. So, Andrea, when did you fall in love with sports and particularly baseball? I hear you're a pretty big baseball buff.
It's funny. I was born and raised in Southern California, and I wasn't a huge like MLB fan. We didn't go to a lot of games, although we did go to games as a kid. I didn't turn into a Dodger fan because we went to Dodger Stadium, which that happens. Whatever you want your kid to be a fan of, whatever team you want your child to be a fan of, you got to take them to that ballpark first, and then they'll be a fan for life. But for me, it was I hated the Yankees. I just hated the Yankees so much that I became a Red Sox fan. And it was my easiest way to hate the Yankees. So that's really what I did. And then, I really fell in love with baseball in 2004 when the Red Sox came back and, they were down, they were going to lose. And it was just like glued to the TV. I worked in a sports bar at the time. And I just think I really fell in love with baseball at that moment. And I started playing fantasy not long after that. Some guys at work were like, want to join this fantasy league. And I was searching around trying to find, an advantage against the other guys in my league. It was when Lenny was on Blog Talk Radio with Tony Sincata and Paul Greco. And I found their show on Blog Talk and I loved the chat room. And I just you didn't want to tell anybody about my new secret on how to beat these guys at work. And, I actually did come in. I placed in that league and they didn't invite me back, which shows you that some people don't like losing to a girl.
Yep.
Anyway, that's how I got started in fantasy, and just my love for baseball just started flourishing after 2004 after the Red
That
Sox
that
won.
year was incredible. So I'm a very big Mets fan. So I'm a fan of two baseball teams, the Mets and whoever's playing the Yankees. So
Exactly.
I definitely, I know how that I 100% know where you're coming from. I was a supporter of the Boston Red Sox up until kind of recently. I've kind of gotten tired of Boston sports fans in general, and nothing against the Red Sox in particular. I still root for them until the Yankees are out. Then, my allegiance with them pretty much just rides until the Yankees are gone. But no, I totally get that, and I completely agree. I'm usually rooting for the Red Sox all season long. Don't get me wrong.
I don't know. You better prepare yourself because the Red Sox, I have a feeling it's going to turn out that the 2018 World Series was not uh, done with honest and integrity.
Oh,
They did come out, MLB commissioner Manfred. He just came out and said that the report on the investigation has not been written, but the investigation is done into the 2018 cheating. And we've been keeping up on this fantasy sports lawsuit. It was a lawsuit. We had the lawyer that filed the lawsuit on behalf of daily fantasy players everywhere against the Boston Red Sox, the Houston Astros, and MLB for knowing about the cheating and not doing anything, but encouraging people to spend money playing daily when they knew that it wasn't up to par, right? Well, that lawsuit got dismissed, but in the course of them dismissing that lawsuit, there was a phone call between Manfred and the lawyers and the Red Sox lawyers, the Houston Astros lawyers, and the MLB lawyers. And the Red Sox lawyers said, we are aware of the results of the investigation and we don't agree with them. That
Oh,
tells you right there that they did catch them cheating,
oh yeah.
that they don't agree with it, but it's like preparing us in a way for what's to come. And
Hmm.
there's not going to be any penalties. There's not going to be any kind of there's all immunity. All the players get immunity just for
Hmm.
speaking. That's how the precedent that they set. So now what are they going to do? They have to do the same that for the Red Sox that they did for the Astros. But this is just going to come out that this was not, this is another mark
Hmm.
in history where the Astros should give back their their World Series, and they should take down their banners. And the Red Sox, I have a feeling that's what we should prepare ourselves for, because
Hmm.
there's a good chance that
Yeah,
they were doing
it's
it just as bad.
it's such a weird, just a weird occurrence. I mean, we all have known, you're a baseball fan. There's an art to stealing signs, right? It's
For
like kind of cool
sure.
if you can get it, and it's like impressive. And then all of a sudden, you set up TVs next to your bullpen, and you start, banging on trash cans at home games. It's like, wait a second, that's not art. That's kind of boring. Like, there's no fun in that for me.
Well, fun is in winning if you're the Astros,
Okay, I guess
but
a good point. That's a good point. Touche.
but I think all teams are doing it, and I guess it begs the question: what should be allowed and what not? Because it's not illegal to steal signs. If you're on second base and you're a runner, you can see signs. Why not? That's smart. Where does it turn from smart to cheating?
Hmm.
And with the video replay rooms, ever since we started doing replay, what else are these guys going to do in there all the whole game? They're just sitting there. What are they going to do? Of course, they're looking at signs. You know, let's just accept it and like give everybody the equal opportunity to cheat.
I like it. More home runs then, I guess, right?
You
We'll
know,
see.
I
You'll
think
see more
everybody
home
should do
runs.
drugs and cheating. Just if everybody does it, then we're all on a level playing field again.
That's a good point. I mean, yeah, we've been seeing a lot during this, this downtime, let's call it. I've been seeing a lot about the steroid era just popping up just because of the numbers and how ridiculous it was. But as a Red Sox fan, how do you feel about, the potential of, winning that World Series, but it coming at the cost of, well, probably didn't do it very um, truthfully, if I may.
I feel like the Red Sox have really disappointed me in the last few years. I know you feel the same way. I've been just they won the World Series in 2018. It's kind of I'm just prepared to accept it and to say to myself that I believe that every team was doing it to a certain degree. I think that the Red Sox have ran their organization horribly over the last 4 or 5 years. They've depleted their farm system and they have not bothered to invest money where needed. Instead, they like extend a pitcher that's past his prime and they give away their best player. I'm frustrated with that, but I'm not going to be like personally offended. I'm going to be disappointed. I already
Hmm.
am disappointed. I've already prepared myself mentally. So when it happens, when it comes out, I'm disappointed. I hate to think of the players. I hate to think of Mookie Betts as a cheater. I hate to,
Hmm.
I don't have a problem thinking of Alex Bregman as a cheater, but when it's your favorite team, you feel this connection with the players and you be a little bit more personally insulted when it comes out that it's
Hmm.
not. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, if it came out that the Mets were cheating in some capacity, if Jacob DeGrom, all of a sudden, like all the pitchers, they kind of do something to the ball. They doctor it up a little bit to hang on. But like if he was going above and beyond what everyone else does, that definitely I agree. That would personally, that would really stink because he's one of my favorite players. So
City Field has the best food of any ballpark that I've been to. I've been to
thank you.
26 baseball parks. 26.
Hmm.
And City Field, oh my gosh, ribs, pastrami, garlic
Shake Shack,
fries, like
that Shake
Keith
Shack, I've been
Hernandez
to.
burger.
Oh,
Have you tried it? What's
I
it
have
called?
not, but if there's a Keith Hernandez burger somewhere, I'm gonna eat it.
It's in its own little area in the
Mhm.
corner, okay? And it has green chili, cream cheese. It's the best hamburger ever, and it comes with a Tootsie Roll Pop because he liked those, I guess.
He's an interesting man. He's a favorite of mine. Definitely a favorite of mine. He's a funny
Yes.
dude. I love his commentary. And that's the thing I miss the most right now is just, hearing the three of them talk about baseball and watching the Mets play. But it is disappointing. But we don't have to get too deep into the sadness. Let's talk about the happiness a little bit more. Let's
Yes.
spread that positivity. So
Okay.
as you were saying, the way you got into fantasy, you then beat up on some of the guys at your work. I mean, a lot of people start fantasy, right? My girlfriend's in a couple fantasy football leagues, but I don't think she's going to go to the point where she's going to try and get a Sirius XM radio show. So how hard and how far did you really go with it in the beginning to the point where you were able to turn this into a career?
Well, I started going to the Arizona Fall League. It's first Baseball HQ does first pitch forum, and it's really just a fun time where everybody gets together and you go to see the prospects come up. And that's actually where I met Lenny in person for the first time. So I started going to those in 2008, and I just started to get to know everybody. I didn't like try to rush in and be like, oh, I'm taking over the world. I just kind of like really just kind of slowly and quietly just started to blend in. And I really believe that, I mean, a lot of people will tell you that being a woman is a detriment, and for me it's done nothing but open doors for me. And I've really been, I think that that's a huge part of where I am today. I mean, I'd love to say that like I'm just better than everybody else, but
Hmm.
no, I'm just the only girl that is that interested in baseball, and that, got to know these people and stuff. And I started playing in like NFBC and those leagues. And then when Tout Wars came out with, they expanded, they came out with Tout Wars X. I applied and they accepted. So that was in 2015. And of course, once you're in, you're like, I'm never giving this up. Like
Hmm.
my seat, you have to wait for somebody to die to get. They've actually been adding new leagues lately, so that helps. But that, and I started submitting my rankings at Fantasy Pros, and I started writing for Roto Experts. And um, my editor at the time, Tim McCullough, just taught me like the ins and outs of writing online, and just really grasped onto what they were trying to teach me. I think the most important thing you could do is just learn, take it in. Like what people tell you, don't brush it off like it doesn't mean anything, but use it to be smarter. And then you just, the writing stuff never goes away. And now we have, I do the editing at our website, and we have, a bunch of stuff. But yeah, so being a woman has helped me tremendously. I will never ever try to ignore the fact that Lenny has helped me tremendously by opening doors and introducing me. And of course, when you're with one of the original guys of fantasy, then you definitely have that leg up. So I will admit all of my um tools that I've used to get through. And now I compete in labor and tout and do the show on Sirius. So that's really just where it where it came along.
No, I love
So
it. I think, it's always important to see where, people like you have come from because obviously, yeah, being a woman in the fantasy sports industry that is relatively male dominated, I don't think should be a detriment. I do agree that, I think I don't want to say I agree. I am happy to hear that it has actually opened up more doors than have closed them, which I think is really great and has allowed you to meet people and start to, live in and breathe in this space that, new blood, new life is actually kind of nice. Just having 18 guys tell us the same thing every day is kind of boring in my opinion.
it's interesting that you say that. And it's not just because I'm a woman, but I really do have a different outlook. I really do have a different perspective on players. And that's another thing that I think has helped me along is just I, I have a very unique way of looking at things. And my opinion is just my opinion. So, I don't just keep saying things. And I mean, think about it. I'm sure that there's hundreds or thousands of people watching this right now that are like, it's really hard to get your foot in the door in the fantasy industry. And being a woman, like I'm the token woman, okay, in this world of diversity that we live in this world of like forced diversity, you know, why not use that to open doors for you? But of course, there's a lot of work involved. So it's not just like once you get in, you're just like, well, I mean, Lenny and I do a lot of work. And once you choose to have a career at something that was your hobby, it is not your hobby anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It can't be your hobby anymore. So, people think like, oh, you have the greatest job. It's excellent. Oh, I do have the greatest job. I absolutely do. I'm very thankful for that. But the minute that you start getting paid for something, it's on someone else's schedule and is a lot of work. So, I mean, I'm not trying to ask people to feel bad for me because all I do is study baseball. That's what I do. But
It could be worse, but as you said, it is a
for
job though,
sure.
right? Like
Yeah.
it is a job. You get paid to do it, so there's a lot of work that's involved. Yes, someone like myself, I can wake up, I can look at my team a couple times a day. Wow, this looks great, but
Right.
not quite the same level of research and not quite the same level of analysis as you're putting in. But again, it's a job, but it's probably the coolest job in the world, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really cool. The people are really great. I get to play fantasy against like the most smart, like Paul Sporer. He's like the smartest guy I know in pitching. He knows pitching. This guy can spend all of his money on hitters and have like $5 for pitching, and he'll pull it out of the sky. And it's just an honor to be able to play. Like Ron Chandler is one of my, goes way back to like the first time I met him was in 2008. I've always respected him a ton, and just to even be mentioned in the same league as Ron Chandler is a huge honor. So, but it's difficult. It's not like beating the guys at work anymore. It's you got to zig when other people zag,
Yeah, and
So,
and the other point you bring up, shout out to those guys for what they do. Again, always love talking about industry legends. But the other point you bring up, you said it's fun, it's great, it's a hobby, and then once it's a job, the amount of work that goes into it is extreme to the point where it's not a hobby anymore, right? So how did you, especially in the beginning, now I'm sure you're very used to it, but how did you kind of deal with that fact that it was like this used to be fun and now it's still fun, but there's also a ton more amount of work involved, so the fun level has definitely come down at least a smidgen, I'm assuming. Like how did you kind of handle that aspect of it, especially in the beginning?
well, I think that this kicked in before I was actually like getting paid, and way before I had a show on Sirius. I started. I did all the profiles for the outfielders for Roto Experts in their draft guide. It was like my very first, you know,
Hmm.
project that I was in charge of, and it took me so long to do 100 outfielders because, you're taking what you have and you're analyzing all the information, and then you're writing a small little snippet, 3 or 4 sentences. That's when I was like, oh my God, I need to do an outfielder a day for the next 100 days, or I need
Hmm.
to, and then, it's getting to be, now it's closer. Now it's okay. 40 days. Okay. I need to do 3 outfielders a day
Uh-huh.
to make it. And I think that's when I realized that, I remember thinking to myself, I wish I could be doing something else, like playing golf or like doing some other hobby. And I thought that's just pretty interesting because it happens. No matter what job you have, you will always, no matter if you find the dream job, which I did find the dream job, but it's still a job. So I pretty much came into the industry slowly, and that's probably, you know, took a lot of stress off of me.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I
Did
mean,
I answer your question?
yeah, oh yeah, 100%, 100%. And I think it's always important, especially just in the sports industry. Everybody, we get into this because we're passionate fans, right? You're a passionate Red Sox fan, so you start doing fantasy, and then you start getting deeper into the people and the industry, and you start doing all this stuff. And now, you barely have any time to watch the Red Sox now because you have to watch all of the games, and you have to know who all of the players are, and you have to do all these things. And I always love to make sure that you still love it. Again, you still, if you ask me, have one of the
Oh,
coolest jobs on planet Earth. But it is, again, it is a job. Everybody looks at the Matthew Berrys because he's on TV, Eric Carabell. Those guys love what they do, but at the same time there's a significant amount of work to the point where fantasy is usually used as kind of the escape from your actual job. That might be one reason why you love it so much.
yes,
But when it does become your job, really any sports or sports media in general, it does become a job to the point where you're not watching the game anymore. You're writing about it. You're paying attention to all the statistics. It's less enjoying of the actual game that you love so much that you wanted to work in the industry, right?
for sure. It just changes it. It's still a hobby. I love baseball probably more than I ever have. In fact, we're trying to find ways to stay busy right now, like with baseball. We actually are having a Stratomatic draft today. I
Whoa.
never played Stratomatic, but I'm all up. I'm all ready to do it. I'm ready to sim my way through a season. And
Uh-huh.
so we're trying that. And Craig Mish invited me into a league where we drafted. It's called Legends League. We drafted our league was 2000 to 2009. So that's, and you got the best year for that player. So like Pedro Martinez 2000, and
Mm-hmm.
then Alfonso Soriano like
Mm-hmm.
2002 or whatever
Yep.
was his best year where he got 40-40. So
Yep.
we had that draft, and like that's going to be a sim draft league too. So we're finding ways to get it done. And
I
I'm
love
just
it.
waiting for baseball to start again so I'm updating the draft guide. The draft guide takes a lot of my energy starting in November at the first pitch forum and moving all the way through. Now, we finally got the draft guide out on time this year, which is like mid-February. But all the player profiles need to be updated now,
Mm-hmm.
depending on what kind of season we're going to have. Hopefully, we can redraft all of our leagues, and because that's the best part of the whole season is
Mm-hmm.
drafting.
I completely agree. I actually had that argument with Jason on Sirius a couple weeks ago when we were still allowed in the studio. I told him I held off on. I'm a commissioner of a league that we've been doing for about 10 years, and I held off on doing the draft. And he's like, "No, I wanted to do all my drafts because then you get to at least look at your team." I was like, "That makes sense, but also." Everything's going to look different depending on how long everyone's out. And, Aaron Judge in particular, if he's hurt, Giancarlo Stanton, if he's
Oh,
hurt, they're going to be drafted completely different 2 months after, if you're drafting in the beginning of March or if you're drafting in the middle of May, end of June, wherever it ends up being, it's going to
yeah. I
be
mean,
very
think
different.
think about all of the pitchers that were going to be on innings limits. That if we go down to 100 games, these guys are like way more valuable at
Hmm.
this point. So
Exactly.
that's fun. And all those injured guys like Stanton, Judge, and the rest. That Stanton and Judge are always going to be injured. So just
Yeah.
get used to it. Okay,
Yeah.
don't.
I'm okay with it. Again,
My fantasy advice of the day is to not draft either of those two players, and not just because they're Yankees, but that's partly probably.
I appreciate that. So I guess let's talk about that a little bit. What do you think the 2020 fantasy season? I mean, obviously we don't know when it's going to start, but with it being a shortened season, you've already kind of given us a couple inklings of it. What do you think are some ways that drafts will be changing, especially if they haven't been done already, or even from the DFS perspective, again, with this shortened season?
I think that so drafts will change because, like I said, these pitchers like Dinelson Lamet and some youngsters, it's obviously still going to change. We don't really know the whole rookie prospect thing. We won't know
Hmm.
exactly what's going on with that because it will still be a portion of the season that they will need to spend in the minor leagues before they can come up, and then to avoid having them reach a full service year.
Hmm.
But Dinelson Lamet comes to mind because he is a pitcher that you can't count on a lot of innings from him. That, yeah, we know they're going to be up. We know they're going to be pitching, but how many innings are they going to be expected to pitch when they've only pitched like 35 innings last year or the year before or ever? Those pitchers will become much more valuable. I think that guys like Robbie Ray, Dylan Bundy, these guys lose value because what was most valuable about them is the fact that they can pitch a couple hundred innings.
Hmm.
They're like innings eaters, right? Which aren't as great as they used to be. But so those players, any of that, I think if the DH goes into the National League, that's going to affect big time some hitters like Franchy Cordero, who I'm a huge fan of, but he has not been able to stay healthy. If this guy was healthy, he would be 30-30 easy. But so he might have a spot to hit now, a DH spot. Will
Hmm.
be like there's several like Jock Peterson and AJ Pollock in LA. Those two are set to split time in the outfield. Well, if a DH happens, both of them are getting in the lineup.
Hmm.
One of them's getting paid, AJ Pollock, and the other one is a good hitter. So,
Yeah, right.
there's
Isn't
two
that funny
reasons
how
you
it
get in the
works?
lineup. Either you're getting paid or you're hitting well.
Oh, my fantasy advice is don't draft AJ Pollock because he's always hurt. How's that one
That's a
sound?
good one, but only if you get him for $1. I actually drafted
Okay,
him
that's
in
actually
labor.
pretty solid. Yeah.
He had a great September. That's why
Hmm.
I did. I don't think I've ever owned him, but he had such a good September. I was like, okay, they're paying him a pretty good chunk of money. He had a great September. It's a buck. If he gets hurt, this year I'm actually trying to maintain a couple of throwaway players
Hmm.
where like I have Ross Stripling too, just in
Hmm.
case he doesn't pitch. Maybe he will, maybe he won't. He can be thrown away early. The key to fantasy is to get at bats and innings. So if you have a guy on your roster just because you like the guy, but he's not getting at bats or he's not pitching, you can, that's just a bad idea. You want to be able to pick up lots of players early, and then you're going to get lucky on like one or two.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them will be throwaway, but you got to be willing to throw away players early and pick up players all the time. I kind of just learned that, which sounds really ridiculous. It seems like something that's so obvious. But at First Pitch Forum, they talked about the people that came in first in leagues, they consistently had the most at bats. That's just in and of itself, the at bats are going to accumulate
Mm-hmm.
stats for you. And runs is a big deal. Look at runs. Don't forget to pay attention to runs, because in this age of power hitters that we live in, everybody's getting 20 home runs. 20 home runs, big freaking deal. Look for runs. Runs are a big deal. That means like leadoff guys and things
Mm-hmm.
like that.
I do like it. I do like it. I mean, I just want baseball back so bad because I miss fantasy baseball. I've been in the championship game of my team, for my league 4 out of the last 5 years. Unfortunately,
Wow.
only took it home once, so that part really sucked. But
What is it, like
been
one
there.
point? 1 point, right? Like one run,
Oh,
one at bat.
it's close. Yeah, it's very, very close. It's very frustrating. We actually do a head-to-head league. We set it up very, very weird 10 years ago, and we all kind of just got used to it. I'm in another roto league, which is way more just kind of natural, I guess. But yeah, we set it up very weird when we were coming out of high school and college, and we're just like, this makes sense, and it doesn't make sense at all. But we love it. We kind of roll with it. But
Well, in
you
Tout
know,
Wars, we started that Tout Wars X League, and every year we change the rules. Every
hmm
year. So, like, one year, a win will be worth 5, and an inning will be worth 3. And the next year, an inning is worth 1. So, think about the number of points
hmm
that you're not getting
yeah,
from starting pitchers and how much more valuable relievers become. So, this is a league where nobody will ever learn anything from us in this league, because nobody plays like this. But
hmm
I like it because I like to, when you throw in a new stat like net steals, when you start taking away points for caught stealing, you learn about players and their
hmm
habits on the base
yep,
paths. You look at it from a different point of view, and you think to yourself, well, this guy gets caught like 40% of the time, and nobody's going to let him run anymore, so I'm not going to be banking on this guy to steal bases. Even if he stole 35 bases last year, if he got caught 25 times, he's not running anymore.
hmm
Nobody's letting him. So
exactly, yeah.
you do get, you gain knowledge in fantasy about players. You become more knowledgeable depending on the certain stats that you use. So no matter what it is, it's still fun, and I really miss it right now.
I completely agree. And that's really what, again, starting that league 10 years ago, it's really what drove. I was always a huge Mets fan, but this is what really drove my love for just all the players in baseball, and just knowing, it's easy for the Mike Trouts of the world just to be like, just to kind of drool when you look at his baseball reference page. But, there's a lot of other guys out there that you get kind of surprised. You're like, oh, wow, Chase Headley was incredible, like for 2 or 3 years in San Diego, where he hit like 350 and had 20 whatever home runs, almost 30 home runs. He was awesome. Then, he goes to the Yankees and kind of is whatever. But and it's always
Poor
just
you.
interesting kind of
Yeah.
say it
Sorry, I
again.
didn't mean to cut you
No.
off. No, it wasn't even important. I was just, yeah, poor Met. When players go to the Mets, it's like they go there to
Ugh,
die. But I
yep.
wasn't going to bring that up because I know you're a big Mets fan. I like
It's
the
okay.
Mets.
It's
Anybody but the
honesty.
Yankees.
I would
So
have told you the same thing. You go to the Mets, you're pretty much your career is over. You'll have one really good year. They'll sign you to a huge contract. Or you'll be coming off a really good year, a la Jason Bay. They'll sign you to a huge contract. And, you pretty much just become either hurt or terrible at that point. So it is what it is. What are you going
some of
to
the
do?
Mets trades, some of the
Oh,
Mets,
yeah.
you look back on it and you're like, okay, like Justin Turner. They didn't even trade him. They just let him
Let
go.
him go. Non-tendered.
See you
Yep.
later.
Yep. Oh yeah, I bring that one up all the time. Every time the Dodgers are in the playoffs and he rips a home run, it's like he was a Met. They didn't even
I
get anything
know.
for him. They didn't want to pay him the however many couple $1 million or whatever. But
Lenny was
that is what
talking
it
about
is.
on his show that the Mets didn't want to pay Roger Clemens 10,000. They were short in negotiations by $10,000, and so they let Roger Clemens go. Guess who they got and paid the 10,000 for instead? That's trivia.
I
It
don't
was
know.
Steve Phillips,
Oh.
who is a host on the show, the network. He's a host on our network, and we
Mm-hmm.
play in fantasy. Steve Phillips makes so many trade offers in fantasy. He runs his fantasy team like he ran baseball team.
Mm-hmm.
He's a general manager, so like it's kind of I feel starstruck around him. I feel
Yeah.
starstruck.
Uh-huh.
It's like, holy crap, Steve Phillips just offered me a trade. Can you even imagine? And I'm like, you got to respond.
Yep.
Like you're going to respond. So anyway, that's just a little insight into that.
That is so cool. I mean, having an actual GM offer you a trade like that. I mean, I can see you're kind of excited about it, but that's incredible. Like, if
I
I
know.
had that opportunity, that would be amazing. And look what you've been able to do. You've been able to build this entire career where you're having these types of conversations and you're talking to these people and you're doing these things. If I probably told you this back in 2004 when the Red Sox won the World Series, I've been like, hey, this is going to be the catapult to your career where, in 15 years, you're going to be making trades with legitimate GMs in baseball. I bet you wouldn't have believed me.
Never. No, I never would have believed it. No way.
But you're here
So
now, and I think that's the cool part, Andrea. So about SiriusXM, I mean, I know you and Lenny, obviously we've already spoken to Lenny. His episode will be out by the time yours comes out as well. What how much fun do you have on SiriusXM? Because I've only done a few shows and I absolutely love it.
I love it. Of course, it's really fun. It's nerve wracking. It's live. It's not
Hmm.
live now because we're in quarantine. So everything's pre recorded. Nobody's going to the studio. But the anxiety level because of the live show. Well, the best part about our show is that we are able to be very casual. Like we are supposed to argue back and forth just like we do in normal life.
Hmm.
And he really is a good co-host with me because he can lead into things. Like he's always doing the outros, the intros. He's like, doing welcome back and all of these things. But so it's a lot less nerve-wracking. But
Hmm.
it's like, even when I do podcasts still, I still get this butterflies in my stomach, like right before the show. It's this sense of anxious, like
Hmm.
nervous. But I feel like if you didn't have that, then it wouldn't be as rewarding. So I love being on Sirius. I think that, I started trying to get on Sirius like about, I would say about 2015 when I started doing tout. I wrote a note to the producer there, or the station manager, Matt Deutsch, and said, you need a girl, you need a woman talking baseball. And it took a couple years, but he finally did. And Lenny, I mean, this is my own PR team, Lenny. If I didn't have Lenny throwing my name out there, I would just be a hermit because that's just my personality. Like I'm not a huge trying to be like right there out on
Hmm.
stage, notice me and stuff, but Lenny is. So he made sure that people noticed me, and I appreciate that. I wouldn't have never, but Sirius, I mean, I'm honored. I'm honored to be on Sirius, and we have leagues where like Jim Bowden is in leagues with us, and you're playing against like the best in the business. And absolutely, am very proud to be on Sirius Radio
Hmm.
for sure, for
And we
sure.
we appreciate you and what you've done. Again, baseball is my favorite. So I always have a soft spot for anybody else that just likes baseball. I'll talk to them all day because it's starting to become few and far between, unfortunately. But thankfully, with fantasy sports, that makes everything a little bit better. And so with obviously, being on Sirius is super cool, and you really do enjoy it. I mean, what has it been like over the last couple years, and how have you seen your personality, not your personality, how have you seen your amplification and your message being spread now that you're on this internationally syndicated radio show?
I'm afraid like every day. I'm afraid every day on Twitter that like somebody's going to be mean to me. And I don't, you know what? All my whole life I've been like, I don't really care what people think of me. That's part of
Uh-huh.
the reason, the reason that I'm where I'm at today, because I don't care that much about that. But I've been very lucky in the sense that nobody's really mean to me. They're usually like telling Lenny that he's wrong and stuff on Twitter. Um, I see, I gained lots of Twitter followers,
Hmm.
and people give us compliments a lot. They reach out and they say, we love listening to your show. And of course that's just very rewarding. It's
Hmm.
very rewarding to hear that, especially when it's a woman. They say, we would just love to have coffee and listen to you and Lenny argue. I think that a lot of people feel that they can relate to our
Hmm.
relationship. Little do they know, like, that's how we talk to each other. This is not an act. And like, I'll tell you guys an insight.
Ooh.
When we started recording the show, pre-recording, it was like we had not done that. We were only just used to doing live serious shows with our producer,
Hmm.
on the phone. Well, he wasn't on the phone, but he's in the studio, and we're at our house using the equipment that we have at home. So we're able to see each other. Well, when we started recording the shows, it was like we had no producer there with us, and we wouldn't even make it through a segment without getting into some huge fight about, like, I mean, cursing at each other. Like, this is finally, I said to the producer, you have to sit on with us, get on
Yep.
Skype, get on Zoom, whatever it takes. You have to just be there, because Lenny and I can't get through a show. It's taking us like 6 hours to do a show, and like half of our coffee mugs are broken after the show, you know? So we had no idea that we had that type of fiery
Uh-huh.
relationship, but just having somebody there in the same call with you, it keeps you behaving well.
Mm-hmm.
And you probably hold back things that you would normally say about how annoyed you are at the other person and cursing.
Mm-hmm.
So, but as far as our message being out there, I think I hope that people listen to it. I hope people like it, you know.
Yeah.
I try to avoid too much social media, but I do really
Probably for the
appreciate when
better.
people reach out and say compliments and stuff like that.
That is awesome. Yeah, I try and avoid a little bit of social media too, especially now. A lot of too much negativity. We're always trying to spread positivity here over at Win Daily, and I know that's what you guys are trying to do as well. Unless you're talking to each other, in that case, sounds like you're trying to strangle each other a little bit. But that's I'll
It's
let the
only between
listeners
us, though, and people
exactly.
actually, I think it brings people joy to see and to hear our banter, because they know that their wife or their husband does the same, that they
Mm-hmm.
have the same arguments. It's like, you don't know what you're talking about, okay? Like, you're out of your mind and stuff like that. People just relate to it. And here's funny too. The more we argue, like the more intense our fights are on air. There's been times where I'm like, that's it. They're gonna fire. We're fired. There's no
Mm-hmm.
way they want us back after this. I will never be back. Probably won't even be asked to be back. And that's when people are like, really, the more
Mm-hmm.
we hate each other, the more people like the show, find entertainment in the show. That's fine, because, you know, we've hated each other so many times that just we'll be okay in an
Mm-hmm.
hour. No big deal. But
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly. What do you remember what your biggest argument was about?
yes, I do.
Okay, perfect. Do you want to tell us? Just a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Tell us
in
your side so we know who was right.
Lenny will tell the same story. It was one year, it was early in the relation. It was probably like 2012. And Lenny
Mm.
was on Sirius at the time, and he had some callers that would call in every week from Long Island. Bob from Long Island is the one that basically invited him to be in a football league that they do, live draft every year. They've been doing it for years. And so Lenny wanted me to get a team too, but they didn't have a team. So we were going to split a football team. We were going to share a team, right? And so Lenny and I like talked about who we were going to draft in the first round and stuff like that. And here comes the morning of the show, or the morning of the draft. And we're getting ready to drive to Bob's house. And we cannot agree on who to pick in the first round. I wanted to get Calvin Johnson. He didn't want a running or a wide receiver. He wanted a running back. We fought so bad that we would not go to the draft together. We said, we're not going together. One of us is going. I said, you go, because it's your friend, it's your caller. You know, I had never met. I did know them though, because we were in the baseball league that they had.
Mm-hmm.
So I did meet them before, but we wouldn't go to the draft together. We were so pissed off at each other. And so then we decided that I would go. And all I want to do is get to this draft. And I'm late now because we're fighting, and I got to stop at the liquor store because I can't even show up at this draft just without any liquor. And so actually, and Lenny was so mad. He was watching the draft as it was going on CBS. They were entering in the players as the draft was going. And I started the draft over the phone because they didn't want to wait. And I was like, just all draft over the phone. Just tell me when it's my turn and I'll draft players. The first 4 rounds was over the phone. Finally got there, and I actually drafted Calvin Johnson just like I wanted to. I drafted Peyton Manning that year. He was coming back from the neck injury, and nobody wanted him. And I was like, I'm going to give him a shot. And I won that league that year. $1,500 I won. But when I got home, Lenny was like, why did you do that? Your team is so horrible. All he did was sit on the phone with Tony all day talking about how bad my team was, you know, because he's frustrated. He wants to be
Mm-hmm.
there.
Yep.
But we've had the most serious fights when we've tried to share teams. One year we did a baseball team together. We tried to draft together, and I walked out of the draft. I was so mad at him. Like, but So that's really one time I got out of the car and started walking because he was talking shit on Ryan Howard. He was like talking about Ryan Howard's Achilles injury, and I tore my Achilles, so I know how long it takes. I was in a hard cast for 6 months. So you definitely, it's time, but you can come back, right?
Hmm.
Well, I was so mad at Lenny because he was trying to tell me that Ryan Howard was not going to come back. And he didn't come back, by the way. Lenny was right on that one. But I got out of the car and started walking home at a stoplight. I was so mad at Lenny.
Man, oh, I wish I could be a fly on the wall. I guess don't even have to be a fly on the wall. I have to do.
No,
I
we
mean,
just
Sirius.
publicize it all.
Yeah, exactly. Sirius is free right now for anybody until I think May 15th. So I mean, check it out. See what you guys got rocking and rolling.
Yep.
So Andrea, this was awesome. I
Thanks for
cannot
having me.
wait to do this again. Andrea Lamont, Lenny Melnick Fantasy Sports, formerly with Bleacher Report and Roto Experts, and currently on The Lady and the Legend on Sirius XM. What channel is it? 217? I
Sirius
never remember
XM
the channel.
87.
87.
XM 87. Yeah,
Two
fantasy
something. Yeah,
sports.
Fantasy Sports
I
Radio.
don't know the channels,
Exact.
but if you go in there and scroll down,
Yeah,
you'll see the icon, it's right.
that's perfect. Awesome. Andrea, this was incredible.
Like I
Thank you so
said,
much for your time.
Lenny does all of the technical stuff, like XM
I love it.
87.
Love it. Awesome. Thanks, Andrea.
Thank you for having me.